I had to sort of touched this place that was itching for me, and I reacted and I took off. I said, I'm getting out of here. And I felt like I was somehow at odds with my experience physically, emotionally. So meeting him was like meeting like the possibility of life. And
I feel really emotional just listening
yes,
to this.
my body was just on fire, just in hell. I was just like a pressure cooker there on the cushion, suffering.
Like, hold on a sec. You said you decided that you're gonna stay there for 2 months.
Me, I was always looking for this, how can I be with life? How can I be with people?
Corey, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Maggie. Yeah.
So happy to have you here. You come recommended by someone who spoke of you really highly, someone who really appreciated the fact that you underline the role of the body in the process of awakening, and I'm kind of like seeing the body as a gateway, which I very much share the same view. So I went on to watch a few of your conversations, and literally within, I don't know if it took me 10 minutes because I go by sense, I don't really operate much from here. And I was like, yeah, please, anytime, where's Corey? How did I not hear about him? And so here you are. So I'm really glad.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Great, wonderful, wonderful. Happy to be here.
I had trouble deciding what I actually want to talk about because there's so many things I want to talk about. So I thought probably I'll start with like the things that I always like to do on this channel, just having different people telling their stories and different experiences, because it's one of the ways I like to show people that there are so many different paths, that despite similarities and certain patterns, our journeys are really unique. And so I would love to hear your story, and especially your journey to the Zen Monastery and what that was like.
Yeah, I had a pretty normal childhood, and nothing too dramatic really, except divorce is hard for kids. But I was quite an athlete. I was always running around, and I was very serious in certain ways about what life was. I was sort of wound tight. My mother would always say I was like an old man in a little boy's body, and so I had a sense of urgency from an early age to kind of crack into my experience, and I think that was just from a very early age. It was something that was very necessary for me to discover. And I lived in the woods, and I would in the woods, being out in the forest, and I would just feel things open up for me, and I had certain clairvoyant experiences that would come over me, and just knew there was something beyond the veil that I had to touch in my life, and I had to go deeper into. I was again a big athlete, and yet I felt like so intense all the time, and in my body in general, kind of walking around as a person, I felt like I was kind of not meeting reality in the way that I felt I needed to with all of my being. I felt like I was somehow at odds with my experience physically, emotionally, and it was loud. So this was something like, oh, I have to work on this. So this was never like I like spirituality, I want to do that. It was more that my whole being was sort of being pulled into something, even at an early age. And actually through sports, through movement, was often my way that I'd be playing sandlot football. I'd be running around, and all of a sudden things would slow down, and my awareness would change, and I could see a type of freedom within the movement, and I guess I just profoundly relaxed within that and connected. And so the sports were sort of my artistic venue to start to discover something. It was my medium. I was in the Midwest of America where sports are kind of life there, and it's not there wasn't a lot of artistic expression there for me. So sports was my kind of venue to dive into my experience, and in that, I started to see that there were things going on below the surface, off my radar, that I could touch at times in movement, in absorption and movement, and but then I was a good student. I went to college, and in the midst of college, something started to happen where I think my everything kind of came to a head. This intensity of who I was and how I needed to meet my experience, um, and I my body kind of locked up one day, and I didn't. It was like my again, my whole being sort of hit this wall, and my body was a symptom of that. And so I went to I tried to do my yoga. I was doing Qigong at that time. I was trying very hard to interact with my experience and open up. And I wasn't very good at it. I struggled a lot with that. I was kind of tight and um, like kind of like too much energy and not knowing what to do with it. And I was in this yoga class. We were running around. I went to school in Montana, and we were running around, and we thought we were Jack Kerouac, and we were running around being crazy and wild. And we had kind of broken into this yoga class, and we were
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
this yoga class, um, and one day the teacher said, "There's going to be this evening of non-directed body movement, um, and where you just stand there and you let your body open up and you don't do anything to it." And I was intrigued by that, and so because trying to do it was often it felt like I would get in the way when I tried.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so I went that evening, and I stood in this meditation hall, hardwood floors, and with about 20 people, something like that, for an hour. And I felt like my body was going to just explode, and my neck was unwinding. And I think it was from birth, the cord wrapped around my neck. And I just felt like, oh, this is huge. There's something really going on here. This is a way for me to start to interact with my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then about a couple weeks later, I was interested in spirituality. I was interested in Zen. I was interested in Buddhism. And I went to see this teacher of Tibetan Buddhism, and I was in the crowd there sitting and watching them, and they were talking, and I didn't really. It was very complicated. I couldn't quite follow, but my body started to open up. So my body started to like open up to being in this field of energetic truth. And for me, that was really interesting. It was like, oh, not only is this like interesting for me in health wise, it seems that my whole being starts to react to truth. Like, so this is bigger than just me and my issues. This is something really interesting. What's really going on here? And so I left, and then I went through some bodywork stuff, and but I knew I had to do some kind of internal energetic work. I knew that there was something going on that I really needed to start to work on in my process. And someone recommended that I go visit and study with Shoto Harada Roshi, and that's on Whidbey Island where I live now. And I actually wrote Gary Snyder, and Gary Snyder's a famous poet. I don't know if you know him, but he's a famous poet. And I said, I want to be a writer. I want to go to Japan. And he said, no, go to Tahoma. There's a real teacher who's there, and he's creating a real place. And I was kind of half, rebellious, maniac rock climber, half like super desperate, like spiritual problem walking around. So I was okay, I'll go. And you have all these ideas. And I went and when I went, the teacher wasn't there, but there was a head monk and some monks there, just a couple. And they were really beautiful. And they
Hmm.
were and and they also pushed my buttons like crazy. Like what I would say something and they would respond and it really, really pissed me off. Like I was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I'm getting out of here. Like I don't want to be with these people. I want to live my life. But what had happened is they had started to kind of touch. I had to sort of touch this place that was itching for me, and I reacted and I took off. I said, I'm getting out of here. And I went and I was traveling. And when I was traveling, I was in Cuba and I saw that I couldn't be happy. I couldn't be there. I couldn't be I couldn't meet my experience. I couldn't be happy. And I realized, oh, it's the internal trip. I have to do this internal process. And so luckily I came back and luckily that I wrote them and I said, I want to come back and I have fond memories. And I don't know why I said that because
Because it wasn't true.
I know I wasn't true.
Listen, anything to go back in, anything that will get you in. I totally get
I
it.
don't know why. I don't know why, but I had to. I had to. And when I went back, the Roshi was there. And so meeting him was just transformative. So so meeting him was like meeting like the possibility of life. And seeing someone who was like me, super, super intense and profoundly deep and powerful. Whereas I was like super intense and I was just flailing around in my experience, you know. And
Yeah.
met him and I said, why would somebody like me go to Japan? He said, what do you think? And I was like, well, I think it depends on the person, what they want to do, who they, what they are. And he said, no, it's to realize why you were born. And I really had nowhere to put that. I had nowhere to put that in. Like, okay, that doesn't calculate anywhere. And seeing him and seeing how profoundly like um physically present he was, like the most physically like being in front of him is like being in front of this huge mountain. And and he's this little guy, he's like 5 foot, and he's just tiny, but he's this huge. And that just profoundly touched me. And so I didn't know what to do with it. But that week, that was a week-long retreat, and I got there on day 3 or 4, and I sat in one of these chairs with your knees on it, and you're like computer chairs, and I was in hell. I was just in total hell. My body was just on fire, just in hell. And at the end of that retreat on like day 7, the last day, I got once in a while when you're starting out on this, you get like a carrot, like something shows you, oh, there's something to this. And I felt like I swallowed my brain. And I was there and I could hear everybody's thoughts and time stopped. And I felt like my breath stopped, gone, no breath. And I was just sitting there like, what is going on here? And they were doing in Zen, you do this walking part, and they were walking, and I couldn't get up. I was just there, and this goofball on the beginner part of the Zendo. And and then I got up, I went home, I slept on my brother's couch, I got up and I was back to who I always was. And but
Hmm.
I had seen something. I had seen like, oh, there's something to this. So my whole being had already been kind of I dipped my foot into something there that was calling to me. And this is a possibility. And then I was like, still, no way. I'm not going to go do that. I don't want to be a monk. I want to be person in the world. I want to be an artist. But I couldn't really do things. I was going in 5 directions at once. And but I got out of Seattle. I was living in Seattle. I got out of Seattle. I was living on the island here, and I started to go more and more to the Zendo and to the meditation hall. And then I was here on another retreat, um, and day 6 was 9/11.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was there in day 6. The head monk came in and said, 2 planes have crashed. And I was like, okay, I gotta find out something here. I've got to figure out something in my life here. Something's got to give here. And so then I went, a month later, I went to Japan. Um, and I went to Sogenji, the temple for foreigners, led by Shoto Harada, and that was like getting on a conveyor belt where you're there and you like hate it. It's terrible and it's beautiful, and you're there in these old Japanese farm clothes, and you're eating rice gruel, and you just want to get the hell out of there. And yet it's so beautiful and powerful. And you see, oh, I can spend a long time here. There's something really going on here. Being in the monastery, it's like half, yuppies playing dress up. You know, it's like people who are somewhat often a little bit, they come from a little bit of a privileged life. They're there doing this training in this archaic place. And so there's a little bit of that. And you're like, this feels weird, you know? And then the other half is like, it's the most profound, like Jedi training. So you're there,
Right.
and you kind of have both of that. To get there is a whole thing, just to get to Japan and do it is a whole
Mm.
thing. So I actually like worked doing this crazy job to be able to make money to go. But yeah, totally. And they do vet people, and which is important because you can't really go there like if the vessel is not quite healthy, like it's very intense, the environment. So people could have serious psychological issues if they're
Yeah.
not, if they're not ready. So they do vet for sure. And yet still there's a little bit of that feeling, and and I was there, and I was like, I'll give it 2 months. I'll be here for a couple months. And at first when I was there, I would go, so you do this one-on-one interview with the Roshi, and I would go and I would just cry. I had so much in me, and I would just go see him. And this is like, Sanzen is stereotypically like this harsh, it's this harsh, energetic exchange where the Roshi is pounding you into opening up, and also though I would say the Roshi was so beautifully soft with me when I needed it. So there are a lot of stereotypes about Zen, and I would caution people about those because a real teacher will give you what you need. And I found that with the Roshi, I was intense enough. He was very soft with me at first. And
Hmm.
so I was so intense, and you learn this type of breathing where you exhale, you exhale completely, you exhale. And this starts to unify your mind and starts to bring you deeper into samadhi. Samadhi as a functioning thing that you're doing all the time. And this is profoundly hard for me. And I had a really hard time sitting in the lotus position, half lotus, you name it. Very, very difficult for me at first. I was just like a pressure cooker there on the cushion, suffering. And so, but something beautiful was also happening. Like, it's like you're on this conveyor belt where, oh, like I can see this is going to change me. This is an opportunity to really to do this. And then seeing the teacher, like, this is a possibility. You can do this. And so all of my cells somehow knew that this was a possibility. And so you're compelled in a way to keep going. Even though I'd love to go home and do my thing, I felt so compelled. And so I was there several years, and the first 3 years are really hard.
Hold on a sec. Hold on a sec. You said you decided that you're going to stay there for 2 months, and you're now telling me, so I stayed there for years. I'm like, hello?
There you
What?
go. Hey, good. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you're there and you're like, I can't leave. I can't
Yeah.
leave. This is like, I just touched the surface of this. This is so deep. And you start to have, I can start to, where I can sit better. I can start to breathe a little bit, but you see, this is like such a small aspect of what's going on here. And the training is Tanden work, lower Dantian, and this is something we'll get into perhaps later. But so it's a way for the whole body, the whole being and body, just start to transform. And I was very much like this, again, this energetic pressure cooker. And the Roshi would just look at me and just hit his belly, and he would just say, and I was just this intense rocket ship all the time. And you start to say, I could actually, my whole being could start to change. And over and over, you're seeing the teacher every day, twice a day. And there's this under the table energetic exchange where he starts to, like through osmosis, you start to see, your system sees, I can see my cells are starting to understand something I don't understand, but my cells are starting to get something. And you leave from that meeting and you go back to the meditation hall and something has changed. And then you got to see him in 8 hours. And so when you're there and your life is preparing to go see him 8 hours later, and when you get there, he can see, why have you been thinking about this for 8 hours? And he can see what you've been thinking. He
No way.
Yeah. And so you're like, fuck, I gotta really be on here. And I'm gonna show that bastard. I'm gonna show him. I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna show him. And
Here's the athlete in you
yeah,
talking.
he loves it. I mean, that's it. He loves it. So that kind of intensity is like, he loves it. He's looking
Yeah.
for pirate practitioners who are like, they're going to push it. They're going to go for it. And so I couldn't have gone with like a really sweet teacher who was, like kind of low energy. I would have just broken out. I would have hated that. So he's like this maniac. And I was like, okay, I'll be a maniac. I can be a maniac with you. And so I would, I'm going to get that bastard. I'm going to see him and I'm going to bring it. And then you come in and he's like, and he's like, he shows you how deep you can go. And then you leave. I'm going to show him. I'm going to show him. And so what happens is over time, you start to cultivate this whole energetic process that it's impossible to touch. And yet you start to be able to work with it and you start to be able to bring that into him. And there's this exchange between him where he's reading your field, your energy, and he's communicating under the table, and you're learning to receive that. You're learning to change cellularly. And for me, this really made sense. I really love this. Like I'd walk in the door and I could feel him and he's feeling me and he would respond. And over time, you get better and better at this under the table relating, energetic relating. And I start to be able to feel his mind more and more. And I need to meet him. And when I started to do that, my relationship with him started to profoundly change. And so it was this energetic entrainment process. And
I feel really emotional just listening to this because it's so profound.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was always looking for this, how can I be with life? How can I be with people? How can I was looking for profound intimacy, right? And with life and with him, I can see this is possible, right? And so over time that deepens. And then when your process is at a certain point, then you you get something called a koan. And the koan, there's a lot of talk about koans, and I don't really like to talk too much about them, but there's a lot of headiness about koans, just like everything else. But the koan, the first one is this. It's like it's a vehicle for you to dive deeper into this oneness, deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And it ushers you into this process further and further, until you basically kind of burst through this bubble of consciousness and open up to this big process. And so that's the Mukon, and I would go every day to see the Roshi, and you actually shout this mu. So you're going in, and it's an energetic explosion of energy that you present to him, and he can feel that, and he can direct you within that. So you come in, and he can direct you like, oh, okay, more this way, open up more. And it's nonverbal mostly, and so your cells are getting it. And so you go see him over and over and over and over, and you don't know what's going on, but you're pulled into this process more and more and more. And you go and you yell, and you're crying, and he's crying, and you're there, and you don't know what's going on. And then one day you're going, and you finally touch something that the bucket drops out of your whole experience, and everything changes. And that was my experience, and that's when practice really begins from there.
I
And that's
love that. I love that.
practice
So
begins.
not an arrival point then.
Right. That's it. That's a yeah. And then now
Yeah.
new life
Yeah.
begins. And then I stayed years after that. And I could have stayed a lot longer, but I ended up leaving. My karma changed, and I came home and became a father and started a family. So I've been home about 25 years now. Let's see. No, not quite that. No, about 20 years I've been home. So, yep. And maturing, um, and I started writing a blog about 15 years ago, partly to learn to deepen and learn how to bring some of this through me. And also, I work as a therapist. I work with people energetically and physically, like as a therapist, and that has also been my laboratory of relating with people.
Thank you so much for sharing this experience. I found this especially that part, as you could see, I just get so emotional because to me meeting what is in such a profound way is sort of, as we call it, the gateway to touching that reality with let's call it capital R. I just found it so incredible that he, because one would have thought, maybe assumed that, well, you were so intense when you got in there, and that it would only make sense to balance it out by putting you together with, someone who would be sort of, quiet and maybe more subdued and calm. But no, you got this crazy guy, to work with you. And it's just like right there. I mean, look how much teaching just in that meeting of your um craziness, of your own intensity, to say, hey, this is okay, like there's nothing wrong with you because you are as intense, or because you're struggling with sitting on with this, or whatever. I mean, right there to just match this. And then when you said that he cried with you, um to me, this is what I call the deepest meeting of what is, when someone can meet you there. And again, my mind just wants to go to like a million directions now. But can we just talk about the significance of even just that?
In many ways, like I was looking for, can someone handle me? Like, can they handle me? Like, I'm the most intense person in every room. And no, people don't know that now about me because I don't feel that way. But at that point, I was the most intense person in every room. And I thought nobody can handle me. Like I
Yeah.
can't, not that I'm better, not at all. I mean, I'm just too much. And and so seeing like a container that, oh, they can handle me, they can meet me at anywhere that I am, they'll be able to meet me. And I can bring all of that and it's okay. And I needed that so profoundly because I felt like in most of my experience with life, I was kind of like too much for everything I was meeting. And to see like, oh no, you can be that. You can totally be that. And when I was with him and when I experienced that, that's when my experience melding with that started to change my process. So I needed that big container to be able to do that, you know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
in not everybody is I think he's a great fit for me. He's a great fit for a lot of people. He's not the best fit for everybody. Everybody has
Mm-hmm.
to find that that person. And he's not like exactly how he was with me with everyone else. He just meets you where you are. And but yeah, I was so blessed to be able to encounter that. And I didn't really understand, like in Buddhism, they talk about like the middle way. You know what I mean? Like, does that mean like you kind of relax a lot all the time or something, or you turn everything down? Because I'm way up, I'm way intense, so I turn it to the middle, and then I walk around like in the middle all the time. I felt like denying my who I am all the time, right? And
Yeah.
so seeing him, it was like, oh, actually profoundly being with what's happened with where you are, that's where it is. And then everything opens up.
Yeah.
So it's not like be something else, and then that will make it you'll go down there and then you'll change and everything will be good. It's actually profoundly meeting exactly where we are. And
Yeah.
big teaching.
Big
Yeah.
teaching. And there's another thing that I think many people might be surprised to hear in your story if they don't know, if because like you said, there's so many stereotypes, surrounding specific traditions. And I think Zen, oh my God, so much. And I've been learning so much quite recently about it. And so I like, one of the things that you mentioned that also really struck me was that bit when you said that he was like screaming with you and like crying with you and everything. And I can literally imagine a lot of people will be like, what do you mean, like screaming and crying? Isn't a Zen Roshi or like, meant to be completely unmovable and, you know, in other words, not feel the emotions?
Yeah. The Roshi doesn't really praise people, but one thing he would praise about me was my honesty, and because I kind of like had an inability to be dishonest, like I was just raw, like I was just there all the time, and so very emotional, you know, um, very much feeling everything, and yeah, we think, well, I'll go there and then I'll become like we think Zen, emotionless, like heads floating around.
Yeah.
It's like the complete opposite of my experience. It's more like we become totally wide open and honest. And the more vulnerable we are, the more vulnerable, the more completely honest and sincere. With all of that, the more things actually open and then they actually settle in this different way that's very different than the control. Like people think Zen or whatever, it's about control. It's the very opposite of that in my experience. It's more profoundly letting go. And then the system finds this different type of oneness that starts to happen. So, so yeah, I mean, this, I'm always like, if people go to a Zen center and they're all like unhappy and like they seem like they're in their head and they're like stern, I'm like, just get back in the car and go. Because actually, what you want is you go to someplace and they're like the people who you can tell been there, they're laughing. One of them is
I
in,
bet. Yeah. Yeah.
they're kind of like this. That go there because it's a big, beautiful um, they're going to be bursting with joy. That's what you really feel. Within the hard context, you'll feel this sense of, oh my gosh, these people are profoundly alive. And that was really interesting to me. Because, and the people that were there were rebels and artists, and they were kind of these maniac types. Like, we had a lot of dancers, we had we had martial artists, and so it takes this profound rebelliousness and creativity and honesty to actually break open. Instead of being like the perfect rule follower, those people often, their practice stays pretty small. Like, they're like, if I
Or
have tea
just here.
or here, right?
Yeah.
Or yeah, contained and perfect. And you see, like, oh, in order to open up our process, you have to be creatively willing to go into disbelief, to let go of strong ideas. And that cracking open of the shell is this very rebelliousness that and honesty that you have to work with. And that creates a kind of liberated, joyous person that's different than the controlled stereotype that everyone kind of that often people associate with Zen.
Everything you've just said, just purely on the basis of your experience, all I'm hearing is just the intimacy with what is and the aliveness, no matter what that aliveness looks like, whether it's grief or sadness or anger. Because again, sometimes we can hear the word aliveness and immediately there may be an association that it has to be loud, but aliveness can be incredibly quiet. You said that at the very beginning you were listening to someone and you were, whether it was Roshi, I think it was Roshi, and you couldn't really understand what he was talking about because he also had it so complicated. And you said something along the lines of that energetic, the body was recognizing the energetic truth. And I think that that's so extremely important because it can sound so convoluted and complicated, all those ideas, all the concepts surrounding awakening, and I always say, like, that's not the most important thing. If something else resonates beneath those words, then keep going, because that's more important than any concept and anything.
Honestly, I kind of feel like maybe in some ways Zen hasn't really arrived in the West yet. Like, it hasn't really, there are certain parts that just haven't really gotten here yet. And that doesn't mean that there aren't beautiful, sincere practitioners, but I think in some ways it's this deeper aspect is still kind of coming. It's part of it's still arriving, and that's this energetic aspect. So I think there's a little bit missing in the teaching and the training of often of teachers in the West still.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really too bad. I think it's a little bit it's hard to see, honestly, for a lot of us who trained in this more sublime, deeper aspect. So yeah, I think it's a misunderstanding that you see in practitioners, and that's part of why my teacher would like hit his head and say, like, it's not here, like over and over, like every day, like 10,000 times. He did this to me, and
Poor guy.
yeah, we love it. But so like, what is it then? And what am I doing here? And he would just push us further and further into this mystery. So anytime you wanted to, like, okay, I get it, I understand, he would take that away from you. Like, you can't get it. There's no intellectual understanding here. Zero. And
Zero. Yeah.
so you think, well, in the way it works is, you kind of like be like, okay, I saw something. I saw something. Now I'm going to walk across that line. I got it. Okay, okay, Roshi. Okay, I got it. I'm good. And he'll be like, no, go backwards. Go further into the unknown. And that's what the koans are about. Like, go further. Like, you think you have it, I'm going to take that away from you and make you go further into the unknown. And so that creates a different animal. That creates a different animal than someone who wants to talk about concepts of Buddhism or Zen, like I have pretty much zero interest in talking about that.
Yeah.
But like I'm interested in this more mysterious, beautiful essence that comes out of this, going further and further into this unknown, and what comes out of that. And that's where my training took me. And that's kind of like what I share with people is no, go further into the unknown. It's not here. So I find that really more and more honest, less like obviously the intellectualism is often the tightening down of the hose. And so we're
Yeah.
going further into this unknown. Yeah.
You know, there's the intellectualism, like you said, and then there is the other bit, which seems like it should be easier, but actually it's not. And that's honesty, which is why you were so lucky in a way that this was the one thing that you really didn't have an issue with. Like this was just your default, because you just couldn't operate it differently, but just from that honesty, because I can tell you that with through the work that I do with people, it's like through my own journey, just learning how I wasn't even how I on the one hand I had almost this like reputation for being very direct and honest and outspoken, but the journey of awakening taught me how it was kind of half-assed, and how much of it was really just a lot of it actually had nothing to do with truth. It had to do with just reacting to things, and from conditioning and from all sorts of ideas what's right or wrong, and that sort of thing. And so actually, it was a real eye opener when I realized that honesty comes, like vulnerability and honesty coexist. And this is why we fear it so much, and it's really extraordinary that, to me, that's the practice. Like if you can just make honesty your practice, because I know nothing about practices, like I'm no expert because I've not done those. But if I could pick a practice, for someone, I would say like just start with that and see, when you start seeing through the layers of what I think I should feel, or what I think I should be, and how what I should be and everything. It's extraordinary that you have to unravel, and like it's almost like you have to like move away so many things before you get to even express the simplest truth of how you actually really feel, and it sounds it is simple, but it is one of the hardest thing I find. And the closer you get to being in the body with people, the harder it gets, because now we're really feeling, so it can be scary. So can you talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that bit, the honesty?
Yeah. In some ways, what happens is, as in my experience, the energetics, what happens is at first we're kind of walking around half fighting reality, half true, half fighting it, half
Yeah.
doing something else, and we're going in several directions. And some people, like that's at first, like they're okay with that. They can kind of do that and they can function in the world, and some people can't. And that often creates what's called the great doubt, and that drives people to practice really intensely. And I was like that. I was like a person who just couldn't function because I was going in five directions. Um, then as we if we can find that sense of intensity, and the Zen practice creates that by the intense form. So it sucks so bad in these retreats that you have to get super honest, because you have to give up and you have to feel, and because all of your strategies, they don't work, and so then you're stuck, and then you have to be honest, and so it kind of artificially creates this pure honesty. And so what'll happen is you're like, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. I hit this incredible wall, and I have there's nothing I can do except be honest. and that change starts to change people over time. And the energy, this is my language, it's not everyone's language, but the energy starts to coalesce in that honesty. So instead of going in 5 directions, the energy starts to go in like, oh, like instead of 10 horses going in several directions, they start to go in one direction. Like, oh, my whole being is starting to go in this one direction. And that in when I'm not doing that, I feel off. I feel like my whole being starts to block up against reality. And so the honesty becomes this cellular necessity. Like, oh, I have to be honest right now. In order to feel like the energy's moving through me, I have to open up. And in the process of the training, it kind of it shows us the feedback becomes clear more and more and more and more. Like I have to be in this honest place. And that drives people, they get driven into this process. And that's much of what I teach is learning for people learning to kind of energetically start to get a sense of this. Oh, when I really get honest and I let things happen, they start to move through me. And so that half-assed aspect, it starts to like not make sense anymore within this energetic feeling that you start to get more and more in touch with. So that's my way of working with that is I do it physically through the body and through these practices. If you're standing in one of these postures and you're not opening up, you're not honest, it's very, very clear. And then I see when I really do get honest, when I really do open up, then my whole system starts to say yes, 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 yes. So it's this feedback that you get into that starts to unify the system over and over, deeper and deeper. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, totally makes sense. We're just so not fucking used to feel, you know, and especially to be with it all, but in the body. It's a whole topic in and of itself, you know, why that is and so on. Because with that level of honesty that we're talking about and vulnerability, you know, there has to be a sense of safety. You've had this container where all of that, it was safe to, because the people who were there, they knew exactly what was going on. They were there to assist, you know, they were there to facilitate the whole experience, right? And to me, that in of itself is absolutely invaluable, to be able to be in an environment like that where there's literally physical space and metaphorical space, you know, to you know, to do that. You know, I can't imagine doing this process completely on your own.
Yeah.
So a few people, especially, were sharing recently that they are so energetically open now, as in they've had these really profound shifts. And it's like, I call it having your nervous system on the outside. Like it really just feels like your nervous system steps out, and instead of being in the body, it's sort of outside. So literally everything feels, and I know that feeling because I've been through it. You literally feel like you're transparent, and everything is like so immediate and so sensitive, you know? Um, so I suppose maybe my first question to you is, where do people like that who find themselves in this place and struggling, and they can't go to monastery, and you know, they can't go on a retreat or something like that just to chill out or anything, you know? So what can they do in this situation?
I'd say that's like about half of the people I work with these days. Maybe about half, something like that, who often they've had some kind of opening in their
Mm-hmm.
bodies. Within that opening, their body has also been maybe a little bit fried. Maybe their body's been opened up in a way that it wasn't quite ready to do. Okay. And so with my stuff that I do, I'm getting people into the lower Dantian or Tanden. And this is a way it's a blue collar way to every day work on, with one of these practices, work on opening up the Tanden, which creates a vessel that you can start to work with all of this stuff in a way like every day. I can work with this every day. I don't have to go to Japan, and I can slowly start to get a sense of where my system is maxed out, where it's exaggerated, where it's fried. I can slowly get a sense internal. I call this like internal process where, oh, I can start to feel that more. I can start to gently feel into that more and see it start to change. And this is real baby step stuff for a lot of people. Like it's often a decade or something where they're really
Yep.
letting. So I don't like to talk about the stuff too much, but maybe you have like someone's had like their words like kundalini. This is dangerous language, but they've had some experience like that, and then like maybe their physical body isn't like it maybe opened up temporarily, but then this deeper body has profoundly opened, and then their physical body has to catch up to that, and that's part of what I do through these physical practices is I do these classes and these immersions, and they're all about, again, like a bread and butter, blue collar way. How do I gently start to interact with this stuff and see, oh, when I do a little bit here, and I can get a sense of that, and then I back off, and then I go again. I work with it again, and people started writing me about. I started this blog about 15 years ago, and I had a lot of language for a lot of this stuff. And so I started to get a lot of inquiries from people like, I'm experiencing this. How do I work with it? And so I wrote more about that in my blog. And that's much of what I'm really good at is like giving people this internal felt sensibility to interact with that stuff that they can't quite feel. They've been blasted. They can't interact. They can slowly learn to interact with their process. Oh, I can let that go. Where I can let that slowly open. Where my system is fried, I can slowly let that system start to open up. So that's about half of who I work with is people like that who've had a big opening and then their body got fried. And part of the beauty of these physical practices is they create this vessel that's able to handle all this energy rather than people will have a big experience and then their body will just be screwed up for a long time or for their life. Like you got to wear sunglasses for the rest of your life, or you can't go outside in certain times. So
Yeah, that's like real extreme. Yeah, but it happens. Yeah.
yeah. So you kind of create a healthy vessel that can work with this and move around and manifest it in a healthy way for a long, long time. This is part of the beauty of these physical practices. They give that to people who they get stuck. They can't go left or right.
I see sometimes, people that go into, say, Kundalini yoga in a very intense way, or they go into psychedelics when really their systems are already so dysregulated, the nervous system, there's just no stability, in the physical body for them to handle this stuff. And sometimes it can be a really nice ride, with psychedelics. And again, I'm not here I'm absolutely not bashing any of those things because I see so many people benefit in so many ways from those things. But I'm just saying that, it's too much too soon can actually have a real kind of devastating impact to the body, and also to the mind, to be honest, because I mean, I think we all know that some people are known to have gone insane for that reason, right?
It's good to go slow in a lot of ways. It's good to, again, this blue collar thing. I'm always telling people like, don't be a hero. Cause a lot of us, we're kind of like, we want to kind of go for it. We want to get it all done. We want to do it. And often it's that urgency, that earnestness can kind of be in many ways, we have to take our foot off of that accelerator and really feel without trying to make anything happen. And yeah, I know I'm not going to bash things either. And I think things can be helpful at certain times for people, but Um, I'm wary of people selling things or being a little cavalier about how things could be
Yeah.
done. I think it's can be very dangerous. Um, and I think it's good to have a really good, strong understanding or depth of this in order to work with people. I think yeah, can really be bad medicine if it's not taken well.
One of the things that you talked about in one of your other conversations was that when you go back, you are actually really learning to be a person, and I think that this is really another subject that's so rarely talked about, that, you know, the kind of realization that I'm speaking of is kind of the end of the person. So you really kind of start exploring what it even means to be human in many ways. So can you talk about actually going back, because you go from this monastic life to family life, straight away, like no like break, no like something in between.
Well, it's one thing to deeply, profoundly like open up to reality, and it's another thing to walk around and be with people and be open in everyday life. This is a this is a whole process for most people. Maybe very rarely is everything done in that experience. Very, very, very rarely. And so um, I would say most people, there's a huge integrating process. It's called ripening the sacred embryo. This is a big process of people. And so, yeah, for me coming back, I was like profoundly knew something, but I didn't really, in some ways, know how to interact with people. I was so open and accommodating, and so but my meeting people, I wasn't very skillful. I was kind of too much. In the Zen world, you learn this focus. So I would sort of be on top of everyone. I would just be right there on them. I'm right on them, and people don't like that like learning how can I be with people in a way that's very real. And you know, I came back and I was like, well, I could wear my Japanese clothing and I could be like, I'm a spiritual person in the world, and I'm gonna my way of expressing that will be um overt. I'm gonna go and like um I'll go and be like a spiritual Zen person,
Hmm.
and part of me felt like, no, I kind of want to blend in with everyone. I want to be just like a person in the world, and let the essence come through that. Let the beauty come through that. And the truth kind of emerged through that in a way. And so and I also just had to come home and get a job and be a dad and have a relationship um and then in that's all enough. That's all huge. That's all was profoundly difficult and interesting, and then also just being walking around and being this exposed ghost walking around in my life and seeing like I'm I'm I don't know what everyone else is doing here, but I'm feeling this, and
Yeah.
feeling you could never be alone, and yet it can be quite lonely, this process in the world. And so it took me a long time, and also, you're not really ready to be it. You've seen it, it, every fiber of your being is 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 like this funnel of this happening, and yet you're immature. You've got your programs that you're still running. You're struggling. Um, you're unsure of yourself. You're afraid of people, or whatever it is that you're still running all these programs. And
Yep.
but that's a big maturing process that not you, but often people. That's a big process, and so I was very
Massive.
very much like that. And I would say that. people who think they don't go through that, I'm a little bit embarrassed by that kind of talk, because I think they're either they're missing that, or they've tried to leap over that part of their process. And yeah, it's a big rubber hits the road game there.
Big time.
And I felt so it was very hard. And also I feel very blessed. Like we were going to talk about this, but in the monastery, I could have stayed. I couldn't, because we left and we had a baby and stuff, but I could have stayed, and I could have been like really good at that life. I could have like boom, boom, boom. And I could have, but in this life, I've had to really face ways in which I could have hidden from, or not had to face in my monastic training. And that's a beautiful life. And I would have come out different from that. And I would have been a teacher in a different way. But this has been, I feel very blessed. And I have 3 daughters, and I mean, they just profoundly show me all the time where I'm stuck, where I'm small-minded, or where I'm caught. So I feel very blessed that life has had to mold me in that big process. I kind of felt for a few years coming back, maybe several years, yeah, like I couldn't quite be with it. And then over time I felt better and better. And often when you've had some big experience like this, if you try to talk about it, you feel terrible. You feel like you need an oil change. Like I'm not really expressing the truth here. So you talk about it, and then it feels really bad. And that's often what YouTube is about. There's a lot of people babbling about stuff. But over time I've gotten better and better at being with it and feeling good, expressing it in a way that feels good. And that's been a big, long process. Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you mentioned that. If you're in a certain isolation and you're not actually never exposed to life, you don't let life impact you at all, or challenging dynamics or challenging people or whatever, how can you possibly know that you're like, it's so easy to assume that you're done and there's nothing for you to learn or to see, which straight away it's like I would very much question that, the nothing more to see and nothing more to learn.
I think also what will happen with people is they'll have some experience, and then it will be exotic and beautiful, and isolating in a way that maybe they like I'm isolated in a certain way. And yet the true realization is letting go of that realization and becoming more and more. You have to forget the realization and become more and more and more natural. And that is fucking scary for people, especially when they've wanted to be whatever they want to be, famous, spiritually famous, or that drives people a lot. Spiritually famous, or idea of enlightenment, or whatever concept they have, and then that drive puts them into this place. But then you have to let that go and be more and more real, and more. And the wildness is that's where the real power is. The real power
Yes.
is in this being totally just totally with whatever's happening, this one mind moment, being totally with this one mind moment, not being in some ways that this experiences, people want to kind of take themselves away from, or put themselves above what's happening, and that actually takes away the power, or really what's going to help people is to be so with them, so profoundly natural with people. And it's not glamorous, and
Nope.
and that's when people feel this big energy, and people might, and I think people get really scared of that after some experience, because they want that. They feel good. They feel like, oh, I'm so good. If I let that go and I'm just like everybody else, then I'll lose that. I'll lose that beautiful aspect. And so that's a big maturing process, like being a normal person. Um, and the weirdness is that's where the real energy is. That's where the real big energy
Yeah.
is. Very scary for people. Very scary.
Very scary. Yeah.
No.
The the naturalness that you're speaking of, the naturalness of being, and how scary it is, because that's when you really start to see how unnatural we've been, the way we've looked, lived through all the conditioning and stuff, that yeah, I at least I completely understand why this is so terrifying. Corey, thank you so much for your time. Honestly, it's been amazing, and there's just so much in you sharing your story that I just know it will resonate with a lot of people that are listening to our conversations. So thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Maggie, and thanks for having me. And I hope people do resonate with some of what I said. Yeah, thanks for the venue to talk about it.